We will be writing about the diagram of posterior triangle. We'll write the mandible, the pinna, the external ear, the mastoid process. This is the neckline, anterior neckline, the posterior neckline, the clavicle. We'll take a brown color sketch pen and write sternocleidomastoid muscle with the clavicular edge. Sternocleidomastoid. The trapezius muscle, both are attached to superior nuchal line. Medial part it gives attachment to trapezius, lateral part it gives attachment to sternocleidomastoid muscle. Now we'll know the different, that is the manubrium sterni. We'll label clavicle. The middle 1/3 forms the base of the triangle. Trapezius muscle, sternocleidomastoid muscle, sternocleidomastoid muscle, that is the apex of the posterior triangle, and the base, middle 1/3 of clavicle. So these are the boundaries of posterior triangle of neck. Posterior triangle of neck. Next we'll write the structures, and posteriorly base is formed by middle 1/3 of clavicle and the posterior boundary by anterior boundary of trapezius. This is the anterior triangle and this is the posterior triangle. Now we'll write the structures in the floor of the posterior triangle. Semispinalis capitis. See the direction of muscle fibers. It is almost vertically down. Semispinalis capitis. Spinalis capitis. Semispinalis capitis. Next to that, just below that, some book mention it as the not content, but it can be present in the floor of the triangle. Below that will be splenius capitis. We will differentiate between these two by the direction of muscle fibers between semispinalis and splenius capitis. Next to that will be levator scapulae, which helps in elevation of scapula. Levator scapulae. We'll write the fibers of levator scapulae. Next to that will be scalenus medius muscle. Below that will be scalenus medius. Again, the scalenus has three parts or three muscle fibers: scalenus anterior, medius, and posterior. Next to that will be scalenus medius. Even here, some book mentions scalenus posterior as the content, but this is scalenus medius. And some book doesn't mention scalenus posterior as floor. So these are the demarcating fibers. If you retract the sternocleidomastoid, you can also see scalenus anterior. Scalenus anterior. The gap between scalenus anterior and medius is called as scalene hiatus or hiatus of scalene, through which the brachial plexus, the subclavian artery, can be seen. that is a subclavian artery, and the brachial plexus. The brachial plexus, since it is a now, we'll take yellow sketch pen and write brachial plexus between scalenus anterior and scalenus medius. Also, the subclavian vein can also be seen deep or behind the clavicle. So this is how you need to write the diagram for posterior triangle of the neck. Brachial plexus, trunks, and the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery and the subclavian vein. These constitutes the structure of floor of posterior triangle of neck, mainly by splenius capitis, levator scapulae, scalenus medius. These are the major muscles. Some book also mentions scalenus anterior, and some book mentions semispinalis capitis, that is scalene hiatus, gap between scalenus anterior and medius. This diagram you need to write for posterior triangle of